Hi, George.
Hi
So
there.
it's nice to be here with you. I'm here I've joined the team to get the name out of Reddo, the Reddo name out there and its impact more out there because I think, like you all think, like the whole team thinks, is necessary. And I'd like to know more about you and your role in Reddo and how you came across it and a bit of your story with Reddo to start with.
Yeah, perfect. Listen, first, we're very happy to have you on board. And you're right, Reddo, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, has been uh, a very crucial and essential part of today's community, and especially the local authorities in which we work with. However, we've always been within the shadows of the support and the crucial support, and we never really voiced ourselves, nor have we allowed anybody else to recognize us. And that in today's age becomes a bit more difficult because we require support in order for us to maintain viability so that we can achieve our vision or mission in that respect. So, so thank you for that. I'm also a bit very happy to have this first time ever for me an interview. Nevertheless, so a bit about me and how I got to Reddo. So my official title at Reddo is I'm the director. I take care of every strategic decision in order to make sure that the heart that is within Reddo is placed in a way that is structured so that the business again is viable or the company. So when I joined Reddo 4 years ago already by now, it was in a complete shamble. We were scrabbling to pay our employees. It was very difficult to maintain. There was very big conversation around potential bankruptcy and shutting our doors. But we remained resilient and committed because we really thought that there is a good way and there is a way that we saw how we can support local authorities in a different way than currently is done. And we didn't want to shut that down. Nevertheless, so my job as a director, strategic planning, is to make sure that everything is well in place, communicate, organize with the teams, get people like you on board to help voice the communication or our story a bit more aloud. And and yeah, so that's what I do. I have a day job, but I have that on the side. I spend a good 5 to 6 hours at the least on a weekly basis within Reddo.
Okay, and this is what I wanted to ask you. I know your background a little bit. I know you have another job, and what drew you to give so much to Reddo? I mean, you kind of touched upon it, but you didn't really go into it. What made you so attached that you become the director?
It's because, so basically, in a nutshell, Reddo really helps the young kids and families that come from abused and neglected backgrounds, people who we deem challenging behavior and that goes through some sort of trauma as part of their life, and then find it a lot more difficult to cope in today's society, which is ever more demanding, and find what we call like a stable life or a conventional, well balanced. And what we notice is that as these kids and families they become abusive and they get abused, and as they grow up they become abusive themselves, and that cycle never really finishes. And I understand that because I was part of that cycle. And so very quickly I grew up during the Civil War, and then after that I had a bit of a, I call it mommy and daddy's issues, which are very different, but I've never really understood them or really had the right support in order to express some of these feelings and traumas I had. And as the more you suppress them, and the more they come out, usually either in anger, violence, or some sort of different ways, which um, you end up putting more pain on yourself and others. And that's what happened to me. And I was quite fortunate that through my job and through being in today's world a bit more analytical, I was able to find a decent job, get a decent salary, which then meant also having an employer that allowed me to have the right support psychologically, emotionally, and also, most importantly, the desire, which I think is number one key for any success, is the human individual own desire to get to a place of contentment. And that's what I was after. I had everything on paper. I went to good universities, I had a girlfriend, I had a good job, I had a decent savings, all these tick, tick, tick boxes, but yet inside me, it was a complete chaos. And so throughout all the work that I've done, I got to a place where I was like, okay, after 15 years of working very hard and finding finally the balance and breaking that own cycle within me, I got to Reddo when I was looking for like-minded people, and that's where I met Sophie, which is the founder, and she told me what she was doing, and I still started understanding she also was on her own path of trauma healing, and by that we understood that society in today's society has a very great branch arm of recognizes people who need the support, but yet the lack of knowledge around really how to solve that problem over the long term and going to the roots of it still doesn't exist. That's on one element. And the second element is that I could see that there was big lack of efficiencies and inefficiencies just because how, unfortunately, a lot of the local authorities and a lot of this support that is needed is in a population that's growing while at the same time there's budget constraint. So it means that you're playing with local authorities' money, which is public money, which is accountable, which has to go through tender process, which is very cost cutting, which is very low in margins, there's a lot of heart, and yet you're asked to do a lot of these very demanding tasks and challenges. And so I was very motivated because on one element I could hopefully bring some of my strategic knowledge around what I've done in my day-to-day job as a financial analyst and understand how to actually structure the company, bring a bit more technological innovation to help us reap some of these efficiencies, but most importantly is actually articulate some of the knowledge that I've acquired around 15 years and hopefully pass it along some of these younger generation and families. Because if I knew what I knew today when I was 15, I just have goosebumps while just talking to you about it. It's I would have been a different person, and definitely I would have harmed myself and others a lot less. So I hope to be able to share that knowledge in the right way.
Right. You also gave me goosebumps actually when you just
Yeah.
said that. I think there's a little bit of all of us that needs that knowledge that Reddo is, what Reddo is trying to achieve. Now, the most essential part, I think, is for Reddo's name to get out there into the communities you help, for them to understand what you actually do, but also that, like you said, it needs to grow, there's more needs, and financially it's more difficult because the budget cuts are there. And I'm sure you have a vision for the future about what you'd like, where you'd like to end up. Or so, with all of that in mind, if ideally you can get the support you need and things go in the right direction, what would be your vision uh, for Reddo in, I don't know, 5, 10 years, depending on, you know,
Yeah, I'll be very, I'll be, I, if we can achieve what we want to achieve or the vision over the next 5 years, I would have considered myself extremely successful. So I am very aware of the challenges that are ahead of us. Listen, our goal is to try to break the cycle of neglect and abuse. It's a very big task, but the goal is that if we are and can achieve that with the most demanding part of the society, then we can change the whole rest of the society and the well-being of all of our communities. You got to remember that the families and the kids that we're dealing with tend to come from the most abused, neglected background by definition. Also, the very low income, very much trouble. There's a lot, many of them end up in gangs, not going to schools, troublemaker, which essentially, even from a financial perspective, not only do they cause more trouble to the communities, but they're also the one that are actually the most costly because these young kids stays within the society and stay within the system requires more funds. They get out, they becomes adults, they requires more fun, they become parents, they become abusive, they requires more fun. So it's that even from a other than the well-being of society, even for the very long term, the cost that comes to it is very taxing for us. So in order to achieve that, there's many different things. One is that we need to connect with these people. We need to educate local authorities, the families, and even communities that just physical support make sure that the kid is doing his math is not enough. You need to heal the trauma. You need to connect with that person in order for them to trust you. And once they understand that trust, they need the desire to decide to actually say, yes, we want to become better. And many kids and many families and many individuals want that, but they don't have the right voices that listens to them, allow them to be vulnerable, allow them to express themselves, and most importantly, not to judge them. Unfortunately, many of us are always judged, whether by peers or by families or by friends, just because of the lack of knowledge. So what we're trying to do is getting the physical support, getting the therapeutical, and bringing a more holistic approach and child-centric around it. That is the goal and the division. But in order to do that, we need practical solutions today. And they come in three elements. The first one is we need technological innovation, because we cannot continue pen and paper. Everything we do, everything the local authority does is pen and paper. We live in an age where we can do everything in our smartphone. And yet when it comes to this type of support, if you look at my day-to-day job, I work in finance. I mean, the technological advance we have there compared to what I do with Reddo, it's like there's like a century of difference. So we want to bridge that gap, but we need to let local authorities, social workers, the kids and family have complete visibility on what they're doing, how they're doing, how much it's costing, how much it's not costing, and helping us. One. Secondly, I would say very important is research driven. We need to be evidence based. I can have all these ideas, I can bring a lot of the knowledge I have, but a lot of the cases of the families and young children have different backgrounds. You know, we have challenging behavior, we have sexual abuse, we have special needs sometimes. So you cannot bring a one approach. You need to bring a holistic approach and a different one for each one. That requires resources, that requires research, that requires partnership, that requires testing, you know, and for that we require funds more than anything. And lastly, which is the third point, which that's where we need to voice our concern a lot more so that people believe in us, so that we require the funds, because we can't invest in technology, we can't invest in research, and without the right support and the funds in order to support us to do that.
Definitely. And I hope this video is the first step to get the name of Reddo out there.